Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm here. Thank you, sir. Last name is Bronskill, Bronskill. First initial is D for David, and here acting on as agent for the applicant, and just our address is, such as it is as an office right now, is 333 Bay Street, Suite 3400 in Toronto. You do have, I think, the presentation before you from Mr. Wengel's office. There are a few of those slides that I'll just highlight as I go through it for you. I would just note at the outset, our client has had discussions with neighbors in the area. As noted in the intro from you, Mr. Chair, there are some letters of opposition, but there's also support from our client, who has indicated having met with the immediately adjacent neighbors on Heath and flanking on Spadina Road. Mr. Wengel's office also had extensive discussions with planning staff through the process, who had initially identified some concerns, but some tweaks were made to the application. And you'll note there is no opposition memo from planning staff now on the file. We do understand there's some opposition to the rear on Shorncliffe, and some opposition on lots that frankly are removed from the site by a number of lots. I was just going to focus on FSI and height, subject to any questions the committee might have. Included in the package you'll have in front of you are some maps that show the range of densities and heights approved in the broader geographic context. Those are maps that we've often presented. Thank you to committee staff. That's the map showing the density numbers, and then there's another map right after it that shows heights. I would just say there are a range of both densities and heights approved in the area. Both of the numbers, if we just look at the numbers, would fall within the range of those approvals. There are heights exceeding that sought by ours, and we've charted some of the heights there. FSIs all above 0.7 into the high 8s, and even further north in the neighborhood, some that are over 0.9. So just the numbers themselves, we think, fall within the range of the approvals. From a qualitative perspective, I just wanted to talk about the FSI and height again from that perspective, because I think that matters as well. The numbers tell only a part of the story, as the committee knows. The site plan that's included, and I thank committee staff, if I could just go back up to that site plan, there's a dotted red line on these site plans that we prepare. It shows for you, the committee, the permitted envelope based on front yard setbacks, length, depth, side yard setbacks. And you'll see on the right-hand side, it says permitted outline. So that's what would be permitted in terms of a house today. I would just note that only the one-story portion projects beyond that permitted envelope, and we've highlighted that there's the one-story projection being hatched. It then goes to the outdoor platform area at the rear. The two-story portion actually has a length and depth of just about 18 meters, depending on whether it's length or depth. So only marginally in my submission to you above the length and depth that you would see permitted for the two-story portion of the house. And so it's been well set up on this lot, we believe, in terms of its adjacencies. In terms of height from a qualitative perspective, I would just say to the committee, it's an odd stretch. We don't often have situations like this. There's only 3 lots on this south side of Heath. And 201 Heath, which is immediately adjacent, does have that approved height of 12.72 meters. And if I could ask committee staff just to maybe flip to the last page for me, what Mr. Wengel's office was able to do, oh, sorry, that's the page, thank you. That's showing the 2. On the left there, you'll see that's 201 Heath, approved and built, 12.72 meters. On the right, Mr. Wengel's office has attempted to approximate how the houses will line up, including their first floor elevations, etc. You'll see they're a very similar approach in terms of design and massing. And so we think in terms of just these 3 houses on the street, numerically the height obviously exists, but it's actually going to match up well and be compatible with its adjacent neighbor, and therefore respect and reinforce the existing character of the neighborhood. The next house is then the flankage house on Spadina, and so you don't have that same adjacency. We understand some concerns at the rear about landscaping. I'm happy to talk about those in terms of questions from the committee. But I would just note that the one-story portion is 16 meters from the rear lot line, and it's another 6.5 meters to the two-story structure for a total of 22.5 meters. So quite a distance from the rear wall of the two-story portion or 2.5-story portion of the house to the rear lot line. I'm just over my 5 minutes, sir, so I was going to stop there. No, sir, I just said the same thing. I know my 5 minutes is up, and I was just going to stop there unless there are any questions from the committee.
Hello, it's Noreen Taylor speaking, and I live directly across the street, actually across the street on a slant. I will indeed. Hold on, just going to. Is this better? I'm Noreen Taylor, and I am the owner of 208 Heath Street West, which is directly across the street. I also should say that I knew the former owner, Mrs. Bennett, who lived at 205 Heath, and she was my friend and a great gardener, and that colors some of my remarks. I've lived in my home for over 30 years. From reading the letters submitted to this committee, it's clear that the consistent objection to what is being presented is that the variances are not within the realm that should be considered in this forum. The request in item number 10 that the floor space index variance of 0.87 times the area of the land is not a minor variance. This especially when the permitted floor space index is 0.35 times the area of the lot. While there might be examples, and Mr. Wengel's office assures us that there are, of 80+% coverage in the neighborhood, it must be plainly stated that there are no examples of this extent within this little neighborhood. The residents of the area in question, it's a very small block that has maybe 5 houses on the north side of Heath Street, 5 houses on the south, a few houses on Parkwood, and the same low a number of houses on Shorncliffe. By changing the nature of this house, by having this variance be exceeded so much, it really is going to be changing the nature of what this city is about and what this city block is about. Again, I've been in this community for over 30 years, and I didn't want to live in a place with palaces. I wanted to live in a leafy garden setting. Directly across from this person, I have a lot that's roughly 84 feet in dimension. If I were to apply the same kind of building variance required, we'd be looking at an entirely changed community, and I'm not so sure this is the direction that the City of Toronto wants to go to. We're looking at creating greater density for people, not looking at creating palaces for people. One of the residents on the street, Mr. Lee Weston, used the word leafy to describe the ambience of this community. And I would suggest, as you look here at the nature of the lack of garden where the pool is, which has now been changed in subsequent iterations I've seen, the amount of green space is negligible. I have concerns about how water will drain if everybody in this neighborhood has the same amount of built form. I'm not sure our sewer systems will be able to cope or where it will drain off to. And I have to say, finally, that the purpose of these hearings is to give flexibility to neighborhoods that will allow for property owners to meet their needs. And I know there's no magic number that says the threshold must fall within certain limits. But I also know that the purpose of these hearings such is to ensure that the purpose, the intent, and the spirit of the original zoning is maintained. I suggest that the building of this sort does not keep to the original zoning criteria and is not what the city was designed to do. I'm suggesting that this application be either deferred for neighborhood consultation or in fact be applied for rezoning because it is at such great variance to what is currently in standard. Thank you.
Okay. Hi there, my name is Wendy Sokoloff and I'm at 6 Shorncliffe. I'm here to request an adjournment because we just received notice, literally on the weekend, about this hearing taking place. I have spoken, although I heard from Mr. Bronskill that he has contacted neighbors. I have never been contacted. No one has ever spoken to me, and I can say that I'm home quite frequently. There's always someone home. No one has ever come to the house. No one has ever called or contacted me. So I want to be clear about that because I would have had something to say had anyone contacted me. I can also advise that my neighbors to the west, number 10 Shorncliffe, the Murskys have also similarly never been contacted. We're unaware of this hearing for today. They are out of the country and not able to return currently, but they have already told me and that they also never received notice of this hearing, and they would also like to have participated. by the time I noticed I could not submit all of my objections by the deadline of Wednesday, Feb 24, when I just got the notice on the weekend. This is just not enough time. So I'm requesting an adjournment so I can review this more closely. I echo the sentiments of the person who just spoke before me. I would also be saying that 2 pool cabanas in the neighborhood and trying to exceed the variances, the zoning for pool cabanas just seems completely wrong and unrealistic in keeping with the neighborhood. It's Forest Hill. If you want a cabana and a pool, et cetera, you buy a cottage. You don't do it in the backyard and impose on all of your neighbors, which is what it seems that these particular owners are trying to do. I can tell you as well, I don't have clear, yeah. Yes, that's true. That's fair. That's fair. I would like the opportunity to review this matter more closely, and so would my neighbors at 10 Shorncliffe. And at that point, and speak with the architects, Mr. Bronskill directly, and deal with it that way before we can prepare submissions in regards to opposing or not this application. But I'm certainly not prepared to do that today, given the short time frame of the notice.
Thank you, sir. We would not be supportive of an adjournment. There's a fine line between, I guess, consultation with immediate neighbors and going out to the entire community. The architects did drop off letter packages to the most immediate neighbors, including 10 Shorncliffe, which was mentioned in the submission before you. Our client has had extensive discussions with the neighbor at 12 Shorncliffe, as well as other adjacent neighborhoods. 6 Shorncliffe is further removed in my respectful submission. We relied on the mailing of the notice. It was sent out, as we noted, in compliance with all legal timelines. So I'm not sure that we can do much more than was done in these times. So we would not be supportive of a deferral at this time. It would be extremely prejudicial to our client. No, because if you look on the maps, sir, there was 6 Shorncliffe is, although it's on the block to the south, is somewhat removed from the site. So we went to the most immediate neighbors, 10, 12, 201 Heath, because they're most directly impacted. So a package was not left with 6, but it was left with 10 and 12 as well as others.
Hello? Yes? I'd be most in favor of an adjournment. I think this property would change the entire character. No, and so absolutely, absolutely, yes.
Good morning. My name is Audrey Loeb Ross, and I'm here with my husband, David Ross. We are the neighbors at 12 Shorncliffe, so we abut on the south side. I'm just explaining who I am, and we would okay. We would like to ask for a deferral, and one of the reasons is because two of the plans that have been shown here today are not the same. In one of the plans posted, it shows the pool is going vertical north-south, but the one that Mr. Wengel's office spoke to, the pool is going east-west and is much bigger and has removed all kinds of landscaping. So this is the one we saw, the one you have up on the screen, but then there was another one that the presenter showed, and this is not the configuration of the pool.
And the cabanas.
And the cabanas. So this is not, if you keep going through this, you'll see there's another plan that he showed, which we were sent, which shows the rear differently. No, there it is. So you can see that this is different than the first one. So we're not, and the consultations that we had with the neighbors did not go well. And we would ask for a deferral. Absolutely.
Hi. I would favor a deferral. Also, I'm sorry, the previous caller referred to the pool. Which is the orientation to the pool? East, west, or north, south? Well, I'm just going to say the plan that I'm looking at has it oriented north, south. If it's different, I doubly would like a deferral.
Sir, there's no variance required for the pool or the landscaping. The pool shown in the east-west was shown as a compromise. Our instructions are to stay with the site plan that's on file with the pool in the north-south direction.
I still would prefer a deferral.
Yes. Regarding the deferral, I just wonder because there's a revised data, the variance, and also it seems that there's a revised site plan too. Are these being distributed to the neighbors before the hearing, or? Oh, okay. Okay, I'm waiting. Okay. Okay.
Sir, if it's Mr. Richard Wengel, it's Mr. Bronskill speaking. He's the architect on the file, and we had indicated to committee staff that for efficiencies, I would be the one speaking. So I'm not sure he's there to signed into WebEx to be able to speak. Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Danny, can you speak?
I can speak. Can I be heard? I may not be able to be heard,
Yeah.
Roni.
Speak up.
Can I be heard?
Speak up.
I'm trying to speak up. Hello? Hi, can I be heard? Danny Wengel? Okay, I'm doing my best here. How's that? Yeah, I would approve a deferral. I agree with the concern about the floor space, issue number 10, and okay. Yes, I am.
Mr. Chair, it's Mr. Bronsko. There are others who spoke to the deferral after me. I was wondering if I could just take 45 seconds to respond. Thank you for the indulgence. There were letters, sir, dropped off to 199 Heath, 201 Heath, 208 Heath, 212 Heath, 214 Heath, 359 Spadina, 361 Spadina, 363 Spadina, 365 Spadina, 10 Shorncliffe, 12 Shorncliffe. That's a fairly robust notice consultation beyond the minimums that are in the Planning Acts for this panel. And I think that's the best you can do in these types of COVID situations is to reach out. It did trigger conversations, as Ms. Loeb indicated. Those conversations, she characterized them as not going well. I would characterize them as not reaching a resolution. That happens. There are no revisions to the variances before this panel. The pool orientation is not the subject of a variance. There are letters of opposition and people here today who are prepared to speak to the plans on file. I would just respectfully say a deferral here won't serve much of a purpose. I think the lines are drawn. I respect the different opinions. Consultation has occurred. Notice has gone out. We are not making revisions to the variances. I just don't see the need or basis for a deferral, which would just cost 3 to 4 months and bring us back, in my respectful submission, to where we are today. Thank you.
I have a question. Can I ask whether then, in that case, will you remove your new site plan with the different orientation of the pool from the presentation? Because that will be very confusing. Although
sorry,
it did not,
go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, although it did not require any variances, but it's based on the original site plan, not the revised one.
That's a fair, through you, Mr. Chair, that's a fair comment, Ms. Chan. I appreciate that. If, for example, the committee at the end of all of this wanted a condition about building substantially in accordance with the plans, we understand the site plan that's on file that shows the pool in the north-south orientation. That is the site plan that would have to be substantially in accordance with. Our client understands that. I appreciate the question. That's the site plan that would be quote unquote approved should the committee get that far on this application.
Exactly. I think that there will limit some kind of confusion because people will react to it because they haven't actually seen this revised site plan. You know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I appreciate that. I think that, as I indicated, the orientation was an attempt to address some concerns raised by neighbors, which is why we had it in the package. We will stand by the site plan that's on file with the committee that was in the notice that went out to the community as well. Yes, Mr. Chair, that's the site plan that's on the notice, as my understanding.
No, I just want to confirm that we're using the plans. I mean, internally, this is more like an internal question because this is where we look at the PDFs. All those plans in item D will be considered, whereas plans under presentation materials will not be considered. Right. Correct. Got it. Okay.
So the other question, are we going to discuss the deferral first? Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure how much of a positive change we'll get out of the deferral. I think the applicant's agent has been clear that this is their design, so I'm actually fine with going ahead and hearing it.
That's my feeling too. Also, it's not that they did not reach out to any labels. They did reach out quite a number of them. And I think that they have done some consultation, and then on top of that, they did not indicate they're going to make drastic revisions. So in terms of merits, I think that we should hear all the merits today.
Completely agree. I agree with both.
I'm primarily, oh, sorry, am I on mute? Hi there. I'm primarily objecting to the 2 cabanas that are being built or built. Is that better? Okay, thank you. I'm objecting to the increase in variance for the 2 cabanas. There is no reason for it that I can see. In keeping with the neighborhood, the cabanas are huge, oversized in relation to a home that they're asking for variance in zoning in regards to the size as well. If you look at the basement, which is the what they're also asking for an increase in variance, if you look at the basement, there's ample room in there for what's called a storage unit, which is one of the cabanas. The second cabana that they're proposing is for a bathroom. And there are already 2 bathrooms very close to the exterior of the home. And so my position is that the height is just extraordinarily high. It does impact on the neighborhood. It exceeds the height of a 7-foot fence substantially. There is no, when I look at the site plan that I have, it if you look at what's being proposed, if you look at what's being proposed, it looks very insignificant. There's like just a couple of lines. There's nothing that you can actually look at that drawing of the cabana that actually gives you proper and adequate information as to what it's really going to look at. I was waiting for and expected to see some drawings in terms of what it looks like, the finished product is going to look like. I don't see anything. I mean, that's respectfully almost a child's caricature of what the cabana is being proposed to look at like, keeping in mind that the site plan that we have is incorrect with the north-south pool. I don't know if this is actually what they're proposing, but the height of it exceeds my fence and is extraordinarily large. I don't think Forest Hill is the place to be putting extraordinarily large or increasing zoning for pool cabanas. That's opening the floodgates in my view, and I don't think it would work in this neighborhood. And I don't see any real drawing in relation to the 2 pool cabanas and what it actually is going to look like, other than the drawings which have been submitted, which I'd say is insufficient for us to have any actual understanding of what these 2 cabanas are going to look like, and why we actually even need a variance, given that they are asking for, as part of this application, for the dugout, the basement dugout, which is absolutely huge. And I'm sure it already has placed 2 storage units in the dugout basement. And I'm sure if the architect needed to, they can either, find room in the golf room, the mud room, the steam room, the theater room, the recreation room, all of which are in that basement for storage for the pool. You don't need 2 giant cabanas, and you don't need to have a variance in regards to the zoning of cabanas in someone's backyards when it impedes on neighbors. And it is a monstrosity and an obstacle and an eyesore and inappropriate for the neighborhood. That's all I have to say. Oh,
I have a quick question. I think it will help for the other, people who want to comment as well. Basically, what she just mentioned is focusing on only one variance, and that's the variance number 12. Minimum requirement rear yard setback for an ancillary building. So basically, they never have a problem of being too big. It's just being too close to the rear yard setback. They're focusing on the items on the list.
no, I do.
You
I do have a problem. The setback is right up to the fence. Why does it?
That's right. That's right. So I'm just trying to assist you because there's when we try to analyze your comments and back to the application, we have to do it in a more scientific way, to see what you are referring to. So it seems like you have no comments in terms of items 1 to 11. The height, the main building, you don't have any issue about the main building. Your main concern is just the cabana. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
2 cabanas.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking at this site plan that was sent out. The space between the rear cabana and the back fence is 0.66, and yet this plan shows there's going to be trees between the cabana and the fence, which I find quite remarkable given the size of the space. But I want to speak to the massing of the house. This house is 87% coverage, and if you take all 13 of these variances, some of which are quite significant, like the 150% for the FSI, and you put them all together, what might be minor variances, if they were 2, 3, or 4, become cumulatively enormous, and the impact on the neighborhood is significant. The rear of the house, which we face, we're on the south side of this property, is significantly higher than what is permitted and is going to have a negative impact on the enjoyment of our property. We did meet with the neighbors, and they were prepared to plant a few trees and fix the fence, and that was the consultation. So it was not a serious consultation. This house, no, wait a minute. This house is a new build, and there's no reasons the owners can't be more compliant with the zoning requirements. Some of the differences are 25%, 150% beyond what is permitted by the zoning. In addition, the grading is changing to accommodate a 2-story garage. So everything is being elevated even more than what is currently there, and that is also going to have a significant impact. Mr. Bronski says that there are other homes in the vicinity that are in the same range of size, but none of them are in this immediate vicinity. It is important to note they're on Russell Hill and Dunvegan and other parts of the city, but not here. So we are very concerned about this. Nobody has talked to us about the trees. The plans show 3 trees remaining, 4 trees remaining. 3 of them are our land. They're trees that are on our property. 1 of them is on their property. From what we can see, they're removing all the trees in the back property. We haven't seen anything from urban forestry, nor have we been consulted. We've been assured the trees will remain, but nothing shows on any of the plans to indicate that. Again, there is now on the plan in front of the committee, there is more green space than on the plan we were sent. On the plan we were sent, the entire backyard was paved. So this is a positive. Our other concern is the stormwater drainage. This house is going to be above grade now. The property is the properties run on a slope down to Shorncliffe Avenue, and both we and our neighbors have already suffered flooding from water runoff. We've seen nothing to deal with the issue of storm drainage and how the properties south of this one will be protected. We know that we want to know that there is proper landscaping in the rear with trees that will absorb water, that there's proper runoff for storm drainage. And we have looked after the trees, many of the existing trees, for years because Mrs. Bunnett didn't have the financial wherewithal to do so. And all of them are being removed. And the privacy, you know, there's a fence there now, which is a fence that we built with the approval of all the neighbors when we built this house. I think this house is too big. I don't see any reason why it can't be reduced and why we can't have significant improvement in the rear landscaping.
Hi, I think you earlier had to go to some difficulty to accommodate me, and I appreciate that. I'd like to first speak to the height. I mentioned in my submission that this is the tallest, but the grade is the highest, actually, one building to the east. This is the second highest grade on Heath Street from Bathurst to east of Yonge Street, where it stops for a ravine. So a grade increase here is really problematic. The applicant already said, well, my grade is, my roof's going to be close to the roof line of the building to the east of me. Well, it led to this sort of slippery slope kind of thing. You know, if you allow a height increase on the second highest building on the street and then compare every building to that, everyone will end up higher. Already in my backyard, which is adjacent to 199, if I stand in my backyard and the neighbor's standing in their backyard, I'm about a meter below them. I'm already looking at somehow remedying this, and if 199 gets redeveloped, they'll go, well, we'll follow the same logic. It should line up with 201 and 205. So that's what's going on. The grade is a bit weird here because it's artificial. Heath Street is going to dive down to towards Bathurst Street to cross the ravine at level. There's no bridge. They've just backfilled, so they cut down. I don't know why it goes down to the other side. So I think it's a bad idea to put the height increase on the second highest building between Bathurst and east of Yonge Street. As for the density, they're at 2.5 times the permitted amount. That's like 2.5 houses. So I don't think it's a minor variance. But also that density, it's more than a number. It's a description of what you'd expect the neighborhood to look like. And so I look at this and I go, they've got this huge house. It extends 7 meters further back into the backyard than is permitted. Then they've got an at-grade walkout for their basement. That pushes the effect of the house further down. What do they do in the spirit of trying to keep to this idea of this leafy neighborhood? Well, what little backyard that they do have, they paved a ton of it. The pool requires a hard surface around it. The cabanas may not be many square feet, but they sort of like maximize the taking up of the backyard and making it un-backyard-like for the square feet. I'd like you people to actually look at the site plan if they could. In the southeast corner, there's a part that has nothing drawn on it, really. There's the word lot 36. I'd like to know if that's grass. Anyways, I call that the designated grass area. This is not really at all like the neighborhood. And the changes, the variances as someone poked at the number of the variances and the things, end up with this. Well, to me, the backyard looks like a rooftop leisure center. So I don't think the height approval is appropriate. I don't think putting a house, which is the equivalent of 2.5 houses on the lot, is appropriate. But I don't think that they've come with the spirit of the thing, with the little backyard they have, of how they've treated it. So I'm against all of it. It's a lovely plan if the lot was much, much, much bigger, and which doesn't really exist within city limits. Thanks.
Hello. Can I be heard? Hi, can I be heard? Okay, is this better here? Okay. I agree with a lot of what the last two speakers have said, specifically regarding variances 4 and 5 with the height, especially I think the one in back, which is usually an 8.5 maximum and projected to be 11.72. Our backyard, we're at 361 Spadina, and our backyard goes directly into the backyard of this property. We've been here for 29 years, and it's been like a Garden of Eden to us. We have, beautiful open garden, and the length that they're proposing, the depth, where previously maximum was allowed 17.0 meters and now being projected 24.54, as well as on number 9, the depth of 19, now projected to be 24.32, would mean we're looking at a wall that would come jutting past the brick garage you see on the right of your screen, further back than it had, and basically blocking our backyard. Also, as people have mentioned, number 10, the amount of floor space seems overboard from 35% to 87%. There's also a concern about the trees on the border of our property. We have quite a few trees that are right on the line of our property. Some of them are partly on our property, partly on 205's property. So all of these concerns are great concerns for us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't repeat a lot of what I said in my initial presentation, for example, about the depth to the 1-story portion and the 2.5-story being about 18 meters. I also won't repeat what I said about the numbers. I don't think it's fair to say that this neighborhood doesn't have the numbers. When a neighborhood is more than a block, clearly the house adjacent has a larger FSI in height. Montclair, Warren Road, Russell Hill Road, Dunvegan, these all form part of this neighborhood. And I don't think we can ignore that in terms of official plan policy. A lot of the concerns, frankly, focus on the rear for the committee. And I would just say this, the project is not seeking variances for landscaping requirements. Through you, Mr. Chair, as noted by Mr. Cheng, the cabana only is seeking a variance for the rear setback to 0.66. The other zoning requirements for a cabana, including height and GFA, are in fact met by what is shown on the site plan. I mean, if ultimately the concerns raised by the residents about the cabana was such that we moved it to meet the 2 meters, that's something that our client would be clearly prepared to accept. If that was something the committee wanted to do, is to approve all of the variances but refuse that rear yard setback variance, we'd have no concerns with that. The backyard could be designed and still work. There were concerns expressed about landscaping and trees. I mean, urban forestry has commented, we accept the conditions of urban forestry. And I would just say that a discussion about additional plantings between properties is a two-way street. And my client has made a proposal to Ms. Loeb. She has rejected it and instead asked for a significant amount of money to be put in her law firm's trust account by my client. That's not acceptable, and that's not neighborly. So it is a two-way street. Our client is prepared to continue discussions about landscaping even after the committee's decision today. But it is a two-way street, to be fair to my client. They've proposed additional trees. That proposal was not accepted by Ms. Loeb, but I'd hope that some more reasonable discussions could continue after today in the spirit of good neighborliness, because I think a compromise could be found about rear yard landscaping, given that there aren't any variances before the committee for this. So unless, and the final thing I say, stormwater obviously is part of building permit. We will have to satisfy the city about any stormwater drainage and ensure that we're not negatively impacting the neighbors, and we will do that. That's all I intended to say in reply, unless there, of course, are questions, Mr. Chair, from you or the balance of the committee. For sure, and again, the numbers, I always do it, I think, as I indicated up front, both as a quantitative and qualitative analysis. The numbers only tell part of the story, but we did survey what's happened within this geographic neighborhood and found similar numbers. It's a range, obviously, but both the FSI number and the height number fall within the range of approvals within this neighborhood. I mean, if we just want to start matching numbers, you only have to go up a block to Montclair to find a 0.87. But I don't think that's necessarily the full or correct approach. It's also then the qualitative analysis. And I think what's been done with Mr. Wengel's design is the 2.5-story portion really is at about 18 meters. It's designed to be compatible and fit and relate to its most immediate neighbor on Heath, as well as the flanking lots on Spadina, where there's no opposition. The most significant impacts that come from height and massing are on those neighbors, and they're satisfied. In terms of the height from the street, that's why we prepared that streetscape analysis. As I said at the outset, it's an odd stretch in terms of the City of Toronto, where you only have 3 lots. And so you have to design the house to meet that streetscape on the south side. And in our respectful submission, we think that's clearly been done in the image that Mr. Wengel's office has prepared and provided. This is not then necessarily translated onto other blocks, given, frankly, the unique configuration of this block, where you've only got those 3 lots in terms of the streetscape on the south side. So we think both quantitative and qualitatively, this is something that meets the 4 tests, sir.
Yes, so do you mind going, I know I said we're not looking at the presentation materials, but let's say I'm just not looking at the plan, look at page number 7. You labeled this drawing as streetscape.
Yes.
So just to clarify, are you taking pictures of 2 houses and put it next to yours, or this is exactly the neighbors next to you?
Yes, so those are photos of the neighbors. So the center house there is 201. So these are the 3 lots. And it's difficult to do, so I cannot tell you, through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chang, I cannot tell you this is 100% to scale. But it is very, very good and very, very close in terms of taking the rendering. And we know the dimensions of 201. Mr. Wengel's office has them both from the survey and from measuring them. And so we therefore know how it relates to what's being proposed for 205 in terms of first floor elevation, cornice line, roof line. And so we think this is very accurate. We know the house at 201 is 12.72 meters to the top of the roof. We're slightly shorter. That picks up here. We know that the first floor elevations aren't quite the same, but are almost the same. And again, that's picked up here. So I don't want to mislead you, sir, and say this is 100% to scale. That's difficult to do with a diagram like this. But we do believe it's a very good and accurate representation of how it would relate to the other 2 houses in that 3-lot block.
May I add, Erin, if you look at the side, the width or the size of the sidewalk, you can see that it's quite, matching the photograph. I think that it should be accurate in that sense. Yeah.
Well, it's just the perspective angle is a bit different. So yeah,
Yes.
I think
I think that's fair. Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it's pretty accurate, 95% accurate.
Yeah.
And
Through you, Mr. Chair, your comment on perspective is exactly right. I mean, these are difficult to do because the image for 205 is two-dimensional, and we don't pick up that perspective aspect that you do for 201, where, frankly, some of those upper elements, they start to fade a little bit, actually, because of the 3D perspective that we don't get for 205 Heath. That comment is entirely fair, yes.
right, and I'm just looking at the existing aerial photos from Google Maps. So there was a pool there already, right? Is that an oval-shaped pool?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'd like to jump in for my comment just before even the applicant responded to the cabana. I was not going to support that variance number 12 anyway. There are two reasons. The first reason is that the whole development is pushing a little bit bigger and larger. It's already a tick, and I think that you have to give back a little bit. And the cabana is also not just a cabana. I see that there's some pool equipment there that it might generate some noise. And I think that they can accommodate a 2-meter setback. And that's my only thing. I was not going to support that variance. I'm going to refuse variance number 2. But the rest, I'm okay.
I agree with Yim's concerns about the cabana, but I think I have larger problems with the application as a whole. Most specifically, and really only related to length and depth. I think we're talking about I know it's only the 1-story portion that goes significantly beyond what's permitted, but I don't think it reads as a 1-story because of the slope. You've got at least a couple meters of the basement level, plus you've got the clear story kind of pergola on top of that, skylight on top of that 1-story extension. So I think that presence will impact at least 3 lots on Spadina in a negative way. So for me, that's enough to refuse the application. That's where I'm going.
My comment is, yes, I think the cabana, and by looking at the buildings around the site, so it's kind of abutting with 3 other lots at the backyard with some trees. So I think I kind of understand the design rationale behind it. It looks like it is almost like a street at a street corner. That's why it's asking for all this 10-15% increase on all directions, plus the cabanas, right? So I cannot accept the cabanas location. I think it's being too close to the neighbor. In terms of the rest of the massing, I wish we didn't ask for the side yard setback, because now you're pushing very close to the three houses along Spadina. And it's really hard to redesign the project in such a short time by just rejecting your side yard setback and then reducing the FSI. So I would be leaning closer towards to Peter's comment that it is because of all this together, all these numbers together. To me, specifically the side yard setback kind of create that width at that it is really intruding the neighbors around the house. So for that reason, I cannot accept it. I wish the side yard setback was maintained to keep that space between the neighbors, and you can go a little bit higher and deeper without, because we had to back out a lot of people's end. But that's all my comments.
Sure. For all the reasons discussed, I move a motion to refuse the application.
Yeah, I dissent.
Hi, yes, I'm here. My name is Mike D'Oliveira. I'm with Replacement Design located at 911 Davenport Road, and I'm here representing 192 Riverdale Avenue. Certainly. So we are seeking relief to the bylaw to create a two-story rear addition. The variances we are seeking today are in line with similar approvals the committee has made in the past. Our clients have spoken to many of the neighbors in the neighborhood, collecting 9 letters of support, and they have also received a verbal confirmation from the neighbors on either side of them. And we've also submitted a support map to the committee to help illustrate everyone that our clients had reached out to. And it's color-coded to tell you who was in support, who gave verbal support, who signed a letter, houses we knocked on but had no answer. So to go over our variances, when the homeowner asked us to design the new addition, they stressed to us that this was a property they wanted their family to grow in the long term. This is a neighborhood that is experiencing a lot of growth. And with this in mind, we attempted to limit our variances as much as possible. Although we are asking for 18.04 depth, we believe this to be in line with similar houses in the area. There's also been applications that have had approvals with between 18 to 20 meters in depth, also on the same street, such as 333 Riverdale, 305 Riverdale, 146, 104. So we believe our depth is well in line. And in terms of our GFA, we're simply asking for a difference in the bylaw of 0.15%. Our total proposed area is 0.705. In the public notice, I believe it's been rounded to 0.71. The area allows for 0.69. So overall, that's only 2.85 square meters above the permitted, so very minor. So with that said, and all the outreach that our our owners have done to the neighbors, we believe this application to be minor in nature and is fitting well with the character of the neighborhood.
Mhm. I can jump in. I think the application and the variances are I consider them minor, and then it's a straightforward application. I will propose to for approval.
I'm sorry, Mr. Outridge had to step out. My name is Arlene Beaumont. I'm sitting at Bill's desk. I'm sorry, he had to leave for another appointment. I'm happy to give a presentation if you need one. No, there will not be. There's been a dental office at this location for about 20 years. The owners will be removing the dental office, and in the space that the dental office currently occupies, they're going to build 2 residential units. So it will be an entirely residential building once the conversion is made. That's correct. We do require 2 variances. One is for the side yard setback, and that is existing. It's not changing as a result of this conversion activity. And the other is for parking. 6 parking are required, 1 for each unit, and we can provide 3 parking on site. Given this building's location close to transit, I think that parking is certainly appropriate at this location. Well, we have a zoning review was prepared, and that is what we based our variances on. The zoning notice is dated June 3rd, 2020.
I'm happy to move a motion. I think this is a minor application, and the proximity to transit, both along Bathurst and the subway line, makes the parking spaces not fully required. So I move a motion to approve with no conditions. Yeah. Hello. Thank you, Miss. My name's Walter Moffett. I'm the owner with my wife, Marie Black, of 110 Delaware. Okay, sorry. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, our family has lived at 110 Delaware since 1989, 32 years. We want to completely renovate and enlarge our house to be more functional and energy efficient. For instance, there's no insulation in the existing house. As a smaller house on the street and being semi-detached, we propose enlarging to be more practical for current requirements and the increase of natural light. We plan to live there for the foreseeable future. We invited immediate neighbors to review our proposal in September 2020, submitting plans personally to 108 Delaware, 112 declined. 4 neighbors across the street were invited just after receiving the public hearing notice. We submitted 5 letters of support. We believe the design of the front maintains the character of the house and is in keeping with our immediate 108 neighbor, especially being attached, and with the forms, the residential on Delaware, brick walls with secondary materials, sloping roofs, and dormer windows. For example, the front roof dormer we propose will be basically matching the roof and the dormer window of 108, our neighbor, attached neighbor. The existing porch will remain and be renovated. The rear addition wall is proposed to be in line with the neighbors. First floor equal to 108 Delaware. Second floor is equal in depth to our neighbor at 112. The third floor addition is basically an enlargement of the existing roof on the original brick walls. The rear west wall will be in line with our neighbor's wall at 108 with matching eave height. The proposed roof on the north will be 1 foot higher than the neighbor on 108. We propose a sloped roof skylight on the north side. The skylight is in line with the main wall of 112 Delaware, which has no windows to any dwelling units. All technical issues regarding site drainage, rainwear, snow load, etc. will be vetted during the permit review phase. As required by city, we will be protecting the 3 major trees on our property and on city property. We do propose to remove a small diseased apple tree that is less than 1 meter in diameter. We believe the 7 variances are indeed minor. Variance 1 is the small proposed entrance vestibule requiring a very small variance of 0.06 meters setback from the front property line. Variance 2, maximum floor space allowed is 0.6 times the lot area. We propose 0.83 times the lot area. This is in keeping with recent approved proposals at 45 Dewson, 77 Delaware, and 36 Concord, respectively, 0.86, 0.87, and 0.89 times the lot area. Variance 3, the maximum height is 10 meters. We propose to raise the roof to 10.23 meters, about 1 foot, to accommodate roof design requirements for the insulation, ventilation, and structure regards current code. Variance 4, the maximum allowed height of front and rear walls is 7.5 meters. We propose 9.23 for both front and rear walls, which is measured to the underside of the eaves of the dormer window rear wall, equal to our neighbor at 108. Yes.
Okay. It is indeed 9.23, and I'm going to explain why in the next sentence. Change from 10.23 down to 9.23 is a change received from city staff yesterday morning. The reduction of 1 meter is a favorable correction to the incorrect height stated on the public hearing notice. So that's a correction to a staff error. This is in keeping with recently approved projects at 11 Hepburn and 45 Dewson. Variance 5. The setback requested relates to the proposed garage, not, as stated on the public hearing notice, the altered semi-detached dwelling. This is another error, minor error in wording on the public hearing notice. We believe the request is minor regardless. Variance 6 proposes an enlargement over the allowed area to the proposed garage. And finally, variance 7 proposes a very small bay window on the north side on the second floor, thus requiring a minor encroachment and setback variance, similar to 2 proposals approved at 11 Hepburn and 45 Dewson. That concludes my remarks, my opening remarks.
Yes, hello, thank you. I would like at the end, if there's time, to address some of the things that were just said that I don't necessarily agree with, okay? But I will just explain to you what my perspective is. My name is Geeta Sondhi. I live at 108 Delaware Avenue. I am in opposition to this application. It goes against the evolving aesthetic of our neighborhood, and I'm deeply concerned about the impact it would have to the structural integrity of my side of the semi-detached buildings at 108 and 110 Delaware. I also have concerns about a lack of dialogue from the applicant, last-minute changes to the proposal, and misrepresentations of what's being proposed. The bylaw exemptions would allow for large, boxy structures that would create an incongruous facade in the front and a looming protrusion in the back of our semi-detached buildings, blocking my light, privacy, and view. This street is characterized by pitched roofs with dormers. The proposal is to essentially transform a dormer into a massive third-floor addition with 10-foot ceilings. The shape would alter the roofline, create a lopsided facade, and increase the FSI, as has been mentioned. While the design could work well in a detached scenario, in this case, we are semi-detached. My neighbor's comfort would come at my expense and that of the street. To me, this proposal is neither desirable nor is it an appropriate development of the land and building. The massing of the entire proposed structure is out of proportion with my side, front and rear, and with adjacent properties. You've heard strenuous objectives in writing from neighbors behind on Dovercourt, directly in front on Delaware, from both neighbors, myself and the one to the north, and others a few houses down. This proposal is out of sync with neighbors, and if approved as is, would set an unwelcome precedent. My biggest concern is the structural integrity of my building. Currently, both 108 and 110 have pitched roofs, roughly the same height. Even at yesterday's hastily revised height of 9.23 meters from 10.23, the roof is still 2 meters higher than permissible. I've submitted an opinion letter from structural engineers at the Martech Group. It outlines serious concerns about the potential negative impact of the proposed design to my house. These structural issues pose an unnecessary risk to my dwelling. Again, at 2 meters above the bylaw maximum, the increased wall height is not a minor variance, it's major. Among other things, it allows the building of a roof just enough higher than mine to cause me serious problems. And if the drawings are a true indication of what's planned, I have to ask, why can they not comply with the bylaw? It would take a slight adjustment to the third floor to keep our roofs contiguous. The proposed 3-story structure in the back is also problematic. It blocks my light, which is devastating, entirely eliminates my view to the north and northwest, and creates a sightline from the terrace straight into my bedroom. A tree that comes onto my property that I have no knowledge of being diseased, by the way, will be killed. And I have heard nothing from urban forestry about the huge tree right next to their existing garage. As we are all neighbors and live in a democracy, we place a high value on process, and I want to put it into the record that I feel my neighbor has tried to circumvent meaningful dialogue. I have a time-stamped email proving he offered me the plans after handing them into City Hall. At the time I asked when I might give him my feedback, he said he wasn't interested as he didn't need it to proceed. Last week, following the submission of letters of opposition from neighbors, he offered to show me a model of what the proposed changes would look like. It turns out the applicant procured his letters of support, all in his handwriting, you will note, based on a gestural model that distorts the shape of my roof and dormer to match his proposed addition. My dormer has a three-pointed roof. He has represented it as a flat sloped roof protruding from my roof peak in the model and in the plans. You will see I submitted some supporting materials, images, I think it is 1 to 3. I find these inaccuracies very unsettling, especially because they've been shown as factual to neighbors, some of who signed his letters of support are upwards of 80 years old and English is not their first language. In conclusion, we all agree that owners should be encouraged to invest in and improve their properties. However, this proposed almost full-scale redesign does not represent an appropriate development of the land and building. The defining variances are not minor, and it would be an undesirable addition to my home and other houses on the street. As such, I urge the committee to reject the request for these exemptions or to defer decision till at least there is adequate time to review the hasty changes made to the application yesterday afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Hello. I didn't change it. It was an incorrect statement by whoever wrote the public zoning notice. The public hearing notice, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, that's correct. No, that is correct. I thought you were referring to the wall height, which was very important. Okay. Yes. Correct. I believe that I invited Ms. Songi in all good faith back in September of 2020 to discuss the project. I gave her a complete set of drawings existing and proposed, which were submitted for the application. And I also invited immediate neighbors to discuss the project. I wrote out letters. Yes, they're pretty standard. Yeah. Okay, okay. Well, I think the increase in the roof height is minor. I don't think it'll impact on the snow load. However, during the permit phase, if approved, it would be vetted and a snow load study will be done if required by the building department. Or a structural engineer. By a structural engineer. I think the correction has to be made that it's a 2-story addition at the back and not a 3-story. The 3rd story is on top of the existing brick wall of the original structure. So it's not a 3-story building at the back, it's 2 stories. And I think that's quite reasonable. As I said, it's in line with hers at 108, and it's in line with our neighbor at 112, so that seems pretty reasonable. I think the proposal is in keeping with the residential nature of Delaware, in that it has sloping roofs and dormer windows. The dormer window we propose on the front is actually very, very similar to the one that is on the 3rd floor of 108 Delaware. I think that's all I have to say. Yes, it is. I'm sorry, go ahead. No. There's a 2-story addition, and the 3rd floor addition is on the original brick walls of the house.
Like lifting the roof up.
It's basically lifting the roof up, and the wall and that portion of the roof will actually match 108 Delaware. The eave line will be equal with 108 Delaware. Not perfectly accurate. It implies that the addition is a full 3 stories when indeed it's 2 stories, with the 3rd floor really just raising the roof.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments, and I agree with the applicants in terms that the development is kept quite modest. I disagree with the opponent, the detached labor, in terms of there are a lot of issues that in terms of construction issues we cannot deal with anyway. But also, I do not. Given that they are on the south side, I do not think it will impact any kind of shadowing or natural light. So I actually in support of the application. That's my point.
No, I agree with the point Sims made. So I'll just go ahead and move a motion to approve with no conditions.
Second, yeah.
.23, that's right. Thanks.
Yes. Can you hear me all right? Yes, yes. I'll just be very brief. I'll give a very brief background to this application. The owners have lived in their home since 2009, and they have a larger family now. They do need additional living space, so they'd like to stay in the neighborhood, but build a new home that would accommodate the needs and requirements of their family. In terms of the variances before the committee, I'll just sort of briefly, I had sent some information through which sort of clarified what that's being proposed here in terms of the floor space index is very much in keeping with other new builds in the area. The zoning is 40%, which really would limit the maximum size of a house to under 1,000 square feet. So I did send through on, which was posted on February 22nd, other examples, but there were 6 in the immediate area. When I say immediate, it's Methuen and the street below. And in that area, there were 6 houses that had bigger FSIs than that as well. With respect to the other variances, I sort of did a clarification on a letter on February the 24th that was posted with regard to the side yard setbacks and the parking. Transportation is fine with the parking size. In fact, what's proposed now is going to be a foot wider than what presently does exist. So I would just, in summary, in my opinion, what's being proposed here is very much in keeping with other builds in the area. And importantly as well, I think there's a lot of support from the neighborhood for sure. So.
I'll bring a motion. No real comments. I think this is a very restrained build that reflects depths of the adjacent properties, but also is more modest than other builds that have been happening in the area. So I think that restrained perspective helps it. So I move a motion to approve with no conditions.
Good afternoon. I'm Yi Jiehu. Yeah, I'm the agent for 15 Holborne. And the owner is basically decide to enlarge the existing house to make it to a three-story dwelling for a demand for a more living area. And so in this neighborhood, there's a couple of varieties of houses, and the proposed three-story house, it has its front and rear wall only at the second story ceiling, so it fits into the local environment. And I have also some screenshots of other houses that has the similar scale with our proposal that I submitted. And yeah, I can answer any questions if there's any.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my concerns are the structural integrity of my house. When they start building, there's not very much room. I did submit a letter to you about that. And also another concern would be the parking. If you're not having a driveway, our street is very narrow. And there's, when in the winter time when it snows and the snow plow, well, initially it takes up a lot of space on the street, so there's hardly any guest parking. And the other concern I had was privacy. You're taking away a lot of our backyard sunlight, and we grow gardens in the backyard in the summer. And just privacy, parking, sunlight, and the structural integrity of my house and the neighbor on the other side, number 13. And that's all I have to say.
There is no opponent? Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna explain these three. For the structural, actually we almost involve like barely any digging in the foundation. Only the rare part, there is a partial digging. So I think there shouldn't be any worry about the structure, and during the construction, we will make sure that everything to be safe for both our houses. And for the parking issue, the parking is actually does not change because there wasn't any parking space in the existing property, and the existing parking space is on the driveway, which is owned by the city. So that's why there is that item on the zoning review, but it actually doesn't have any change to the front yard. So the parking space is still on the existing driveway. And for the sunlight, because this house is the setback, it is just the same as the other houses. So I don't think there will be any problem that's blocking the sunlight at the rear yard for the neighbor's property. And yeah.
I'd like to have to move for approval with a comment that I agree with the applicant. Having the orientation or the backyards on the south side, I do not think that will impact the rear yards. And I think that the rest of the variances, I consider them to be minor. So I will move for approval with Fourth Street condition number 3.
I'll second that.
We're meeting at 2:30?
Just to confirm.
I'm sorry.
That's 1 hour break, so back at 3?
1 hour now? Okay.
Okay. Okay, thanks.